Picture this scene for a moment. You're at a dinner party. Everyone's laughing, nodding along to the same tired jokes, agreeing with the same shallow opinions. Then someone speaks up, really speaks up with an idea that cuts through all the noise like a knife through butter. Suddenly, the room goes quiet. Not the good kind of quiet, the uncomfortable kind. The kind that makes people shift in their chairs and suddenly find their phones very interesting. What just happened there? You just witnessed society's ancient fear in action. The fear of intelligence. The fear of someone who sees what others refuse to see. And my friend, this isn't some modern phenomenon born from social media or our current political climate. No, this runs much deeper than that. Arthur Schopenhauer, that brilliant German philosopher who never sugar-coated anything, saw this pattern over 200 years ago. And his insights, they're more relevant today than ever before. The mirror society doesn't want to look into. Here's the brutal truth that'll make you uncomfortable. Intelligent people don't scare society because they're smarter. They scare society because they hold up a mirror that reflects back everything we'd rather not see about ourselves. Think about it. When was the last time you heard someone say, "I love hanging out with Sarah because she always points out when I'm being fake"? Never, right? Because we don't want our comfortable lies disturbed. Schopenhauer understood this perfectly. He wrote about how most people live their entire lives in what he called the world of appearances, a carefully constructed reality where we avoid anything that might make us question our beliefs, our choices, or our comfortable little bubbles. But intelligent people, they're bubble poppers by nature. They can't help but see through the facades. They notice when the emperor has no clothes. They ask the questions everyone else is afraid to ask. And society wants to keep its clothes on. Thank you very much. Now, let me paint you another picture. Imagine you're watching a movie with a group of friends. Everyone's enjoying this feel-good story about following your dreams and everything working out perfectly. But you see all the plot holes. You notice how unrealistic it is. You see the lazy writing, the forced happy ending that ignores all the complex realities of life. Do you speak up? Do you ruin everyone else's good time by pointing out what you see? This is the daily reality for intelligent people. Not because they want to be party poopers, but because their minds simply work differently. They can't unsee what they see. They can't unfeel what they feel about the disconnect between reality and the stories we tell ourselves. Schopenhauer called this the burden of consciousness. The more aware you become, the more isolated you feel from those who choose to remain unaware. It's like being the only sober person at a party full of drunk people. Everything seems absurd. Nothing makes sense the way it used to. And you feel like you're speaking a different language. And here's where society gets scared. Because if intelligent people are right, if there really are these uncomfortable truths hiding beneath our collective delusions, then what does that say about the rest of us? What does that say about the lives we've built on those delusions? The threat of independent thinking. Let's get real for a moment about why this scares people so much. Society functions on agreements. We agree that this piece of paper has value, so we call it money. We agree that these arbitrary lines on a map matter, so we call them borders. We agree that these social rules make sense, so we call them normal. But what happens when someone doesn't agree? What happens when someone looks at these agreements and says, "Wait a minute, this doesn't actually make sense"? What happens when they start asking questions like, why do we spend 40 years working jobs? We hate to buy things, We don't need to impress people we don't like. Why do we accept that some people have billions while others can't afford basic health care? Why do we pretend that following the crowd is somehow more virtuous than thinking for yourself? Suddenly, those comfortable agreements start looking shaky, and people who've built their entire identities around those agreements, they don't like that feeling one bit. Schopenhauer saw this clearly. He understood that most people don't want truth. They want comfort. They don't want growth. They want validation. They don't want to be challenged. They want to be agreed with. Intelligent people threaten all of that simply by existing. The psychology of intellectual intimidation. Here's something fascinating that Schopenhauer observed. People often react to intelligence the same way they react to physical threats. Their fight or flight response kicks in. They either attack the intelligent person directly, or they flee, avoiding them, excluding them, dismissing them. But why? Why do ideas trigger the same response as physical danger? Because challenging someone's worldview feels like attacking their identity. When you question their beliefs, you're not just questioning abstract concepts. You're questioning their choices, their values, their entire sense of self. Think about the last time someone challenged something you really believed in. How did it feel? Probably not great, right? Your heart rate probably increased. You might have felt defensive, angry, even personally attacked. Now imagine feeling like that every time you talk to certain people. That's what many people experience around those who think deeply and question openly. It's exhausting. It's uncomfortable. It's easier to just avoid them. And this is where society's cruelty really shows. Instead of admitting that intelligence makes them uncomfortable, people create narratives to justify their avoidance. They think they're better than everyone else. They're just showing off. They're too negative. They overthink everything. Sound familiar? These aren't criticisms of intelligence. They're defense mechanisms against feeling intellectually insecure. Schopenhauer didn't just observe this pattern, he lived it. He spent most of his life watching his profound insights get ignored or attacked. His masterwork, The World as Will and Representation, sold barely any copies during his lifetime. The academic world dismissed him. Society ignored him. Why? Because he told uncomfortable truths about human nature. He pointed out that most of our actions are driven by unconscious desires and fears, not rational choices. He showed how much of what we call love is really just biological programming. He revealed how our supposed free will is largely an illusion. People didn't want to hear any of that. They wanted to believe in the noble stories about human nature, about love conquering all, about individual agency and moral progress. Schopenhauer's insights threatened those comfortable myths. But here's the thing, and this is crucial. Schopenhauer wasn't sharing these insights to be cruel or superior. He was sharing them because he believed truth, even painful truth, was better than beautiful lies. And that terrifies a society built on beautiful lies. Now, let's talk about today. Social media has amplified everything Schopenhauer observed about society's relationship with intelligence. Intelligent voices get pushed to the margins, while the loudest, most simplistic voices dominate the conversation. Society gets the intellectual equivalent of junk food. Lots of empty calories that taste good in the moment, but leave you malnourished in the long run. And when intelligent people point this out, when they try to inject some nuance into these black and white debates, they get labeled as elitist, pretentious, or out of touch. Here's something Schopenhauer understood that we're just starting to acknowledge. Intelligence can be profoundly isolating, not because intelligent people choose isolation, but because meaningful connection requires some level of mutual understanding. When you see the world differently than most people, when you think about things they never consider, when you're troubled by things that don't bother them, finding real connection becomes incredibly difficult. It's like being fluent in a language that few people speak. You can communicate basic needs and pleasantries, but the deeper conversations, the ones that really matter, remain out of reach. You end up feeling like you're performing a version of yourself that others can accept, while your authentic self remains hidden. This isn't arrogance or superiority. It's the ache of wanting to be understood, but consistently feeling misunderstood. It's the exhaustion of always having to translate your thoughts into more palatable versions. And society sees this withdrawal and interprets it as snobbery. It sees the careful self-editing and calls it pretension. It sees the solitude and labels it antisocial behavior. The fear of being exposed. Let's dig deeper into why intelligent people trigger such strong reactions. It comes down to exposure, the fear that someone will see through our carefully constructed personas to the messy, uncertain reality underneath. Most of us work hard to appear competent, confident, and in control. We curate our social media. We dress for the job we want. We learn the right things to say in social situations. We become masters of impression management. But intelligent people often see right through this performance, not because they're trying to, but because their minds naturally look for patterns, inconsistencies, and deeper meanings. They notice when someone's actions don't match their words. They pick up on subtle cues that reveal underlying motivations. This creates a profound vulnerability around intelligent people. We feel exposed, naked, seen in ways we'd rather not be seen. And that feeling, it's terrifying. So, we protect ourselves by creating distance. We tell ourselves they're the problem. Too critical, too analytical, too intense. We make them the villain in our story, rather than acknowledge our own discomfort with being truly seen. The rebellion against mediocrity. Schopenhauer believed that most people live lives of what he called quiet desperation, going through the motions, without really examining whether those motions make sense. They follow scripts written by others, pursue goals they never really chose, and call it a successful life. Intelligent people represent a rebellion against this mediocrity. Not an arrogant rebellion, but a necessary one. They ask questions like, what if there's more to life than this? What if we're all following the wrong script? What if happiness isn't about having more stuff or higher status? These questions are dangerous because they might lead to uncomfortable answers. They might reveal that many of us have been sleepwalking through our lives, pursuing things that don't actually make us happy, following paths that lead nowhere meaningful. And if that's true, if intelligent people are right about the emptiness of conventional success, then what does that say about all the time and energy we've invested in pursuing it? The courage to stand alone. Here's what I admire most about truly intelligent people. They're willing to stand alone with their convictions, even when it means being misunderstood, excluded, or attacked. They won't compromise their integrity for social acceptance. This isn't stubbornness or pride, it's moral courage. It's the recognition that some things matter more than being popular. Truth matters more than comfort. Authenticity matters more than approval. But society reads this courage as arrogance. We interpret their unwillingness to compromise as a judgment against those who do. We see their independence as a rejection of community. We mistake their integrity for superiority. This misreading creates a tragic cycle. Intelligent people feel misunderstood, so they withdraw further. Society sees this withdrawal as confirmation of their antisocial nature. The gap widens, the misunderstanding deepens, and both sides become more entrenched in their positions. Despite all the fear and resistance they encounter, intelligent people offer society something invaluable. They serve as our conscience, our reminder that we can do better, be better, think more clearly about what really matters. They're the ones who point out that the emperor has no clothes, even when everyone else is too polite or too scared to notice. They're the ones who ask the hard questions, challenge the comfortable assumptions, and refuse to let us settle for less than we're capable of. This is a gift, not a curse. But like many gifts, it's often rejected by those who need it most. We'd rather stay comfortable in our illusions than deal with the discomfort of growth. Schopenhauer saw it with haunting clarity. He knew truth-tellers rarely receive applause in their own time. He knew society would rather be soothed by beautiful lies than confronted by difficult truths. But he also knew this: progress real. Soul-deep progress only begins when someone dares to see clearly and speak honestly about what they see. So what does this mean for you? If you're someone who thinks deeply, who questions boldly, who notices what others pretend not to see, then this message was meant for you. Your intelligence is not a flaw to be corrected. Your questions are not annoyances to be silenced. Your perspective is not something to be hidden or apologized for. Society's discomfort with your mind says far more about its fragility than your value. But here's the truth, and you need to hear it. You don't have to choose between brilliance and belonging. You don't have to silence your thoughts to be accepted. You don't have to dim your light to make others comfortable in the dark. What you do need is to find those who crave depth the way you do, who value substance over surface, who are not afraid of someone who sees the world differently. And trust me, they're out there. People who feel just as alone, just as unseen, just as hungry for meaning as you are. Schopenhauer believed consciousness was both a burden and a gift. The burden is the loneliness, the silence, the never-ending awareness of things most would rather ignore. But the gift is extraordinary. An inner world rich with meaning, a sharper lens on beauty, a deeper grasp of truth. The key lies in learning to carry both, without resentment, to make peace with being different, to honor the weight of what you know, while never losing sight of how you might use it for good. And yes, that's the calling. To use your intelligence not as a blade that divides, but as a light that reveals, not as armor that distances you from others, but as a bridge that draws the right people in. Let's be clear. The world desperately needs thinkers. It needs challengers. It needs brave minds who won't bow to conformity or settle for shallow answers to deep questions. Yes, society fears intelligence, but paradoxically, it also depends on it. Every revolutionary idea, every innovation, every advance in human history began with someone bold enough to see what others missed and speak what others feared. So hear this. Your intelligence isn't just a personal trait. It's a responsibility. You are here, not just to understand the world, but to help reshape it. Not with ego, but with empathy. Not to shame others for not seeing what you see, but to invite them gently, patiently, into greater clarity. Schopenhauer spent a lifetime being ridiculed, rejected, ignored, But the world eventually caught up to his mind. Today, his truths form the backbone of modern psychology. His ideas echoed in the work of Freud, Jung, and every thinker who dared to peer beneath the surface. And so it will be with you. What unsettles others today will one day be what frees them. The questions that make people shift uncomfortably now will become the truths they cling to when everything else falls apart. Because society's fear of intelligence is really fear of evolution, of transformation, of having to confront itself in the mirror and ask, what have we been pretending not to know? But evolution is inevitable, and self-awareness is the only path to authentic growth. Your thoughts are part of that evolution. Your questions are sacred steps on that path. Your refusal to accept illusions is part of humanity's long, slow journey toward truth. So do not let society's fear extinguish your light. If this message resonated, if it felt like it saw you, then know this: you are exactly who this world needs. Now more than ever, don't let their discomfort with depth force you to be shallow. Don't let their fear of truth keep you from seeking it. Hit that like button if you've ever been made to feel small for thinking too deeply. Share this with someone whose mind deserves to be seen. Subscribe to Dark Wisdom, where questions are honored, not silenced, where your intelligence has a home. And ask yourself, if you don't think clearly about what really matters, who will?